We got a heated debate over here.
Yeah.
When did mid-lengths get invented? I say they never got invented. They just an in-between size.
It's like a chicken or the egg type of situation.
Yeah. It's confusing.
What's up, shredders? Ever wonder why there's so many confusing names for boards and what's the right kind for you, depending on what you're trying to surf? Let's duck dive into that a bit. So today we're going to talk to these two about the different types of surfboards there are. We're going to go over the shortboard, fish, mini mall, step up, egg, mid-length, fun shape, gun, high pro longboard, glider, and one of my favorites, foamies. So
who knew there were so many kinds?
I know.
You're coming up with names I've never heard of.
There's more than that too.
Yeah.
These are just the main ones you'll hear about. So
I feel like you're naming off like invasive species or something.
Yeah, like the plant names. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know. Yeah.
So first we'll dive into the shortboard a bit. So there's three real kinds. There's your standard shortboard, then there's your really high performance kind of banana shaped shortboards, and then there's your fish, which are just a little bit wider and fatter. They're not true fish, but they're kind of an in-between hybrid board.
We're calling fish a shortboard?
Well, some of them are, yeah.
Okay.
Some a fishy shortboarder like Sharp Eye makes like the Disco, or there's some that are just a little bit wider, a little bit fatter. They'd go well in like San Diego beach breaks, but you wouldn't really pack it to Indo, or when you're gonna score, you wouldn't ride it out at Pipeline.
Yeah,
or Hawaii.
like
It's
the Go Fish would that kind of be categorized like more of like a shortboard? Fishy.
Yeah, that's going to be a hybrid one versus like your black one that's kind of the twin fin, like big swallowtail. That's a true fish.
The Go Fish isn't a true fish?
It's a quad, right? And even like the puddle fish, like the lost one, it's like the 5 fin setup.
Yeah, so those would kind of be in, I mean, again, these are like, it's more of a spectrum than a, there's no hard
Definite.
line.
Yeah,
There's no hard line with a lot of these, like eggs and mid-lengths. We were just talking about that. Like, a lot of people call mid-lengths eggs and eggs mid-lengths, and there's, some people are like, yeah, there's a hard line, and others are like, well, no, some are kind of qualify as both. So, that's kind of the standard types of shortboards. They're typically under 6'6". Some burlier guys might ride a bigger one, but that's generally the size range, and they're typically used for like more performance moves. That's what guys on the tour are going to be riding in contests. It's very rare that they'd ride a step up, but if the waves are huge, they'll probably take up a step up, which is just a step up from a shortboard.
Gotcha.
So we'll dive into that one next. Pros and cons. I typically don't like a standard shortboard. If I'm serving like a really good day at Blacks,
Crypto?
I'll take one out. And the Hypto is that's a fishy shortboard.
Bro,
yeah, that's one of those
stepping into
fishy
the gray
ones.
zone,
Yeah.
Steve.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's one of them.
No way you can call it not a shortboard. Really?
No. It's not a standard. It's not. Yeah, it's
Okay, so
way
what makes-
rounder. It's a pintail. Like generally, your standard shortboard is going to be like a squash or a rounded pin or a thumbtail or something like that. Maybe even diamond or swallow.
Okay, can you describe those?
Yeah. So a squash tail is kind of a flat, squashed looking tail. A thumbtail is more like a thumb shape. You listeners aren't going to be able to hear that, but look at your thumb.
What's the difference between that and a rounded pin?
A rounded pin has a much rounder profile, whereas a thumbtail is a hybrid between a squash and a rounded pintail.
Okay.
There's also pintails, which the Hypto Crypto is, but those aren't typically your standard shortboards. Those are the more rounded of a tail, the more that the board can kind of carve. It's much better for turns, but it kind of lacks at release. So if you want like kind of a flickier board, you're doing airs, all those sort of things, you want more of a squash tail or a swallow tail, which is kind of like a V shape in the back of a board. It just helps with how it releases from the water. That's one of the things about the Hypto Crypto. It's kind of surprising that it's good for airs because it does have a pin or slightly rounded pin type tail. And also pintails don't really, here's a good con for them. They don't work, rounded pins and thumbtails don't work as well when the conditions get a bit bumpy because it tends to grab onto all those little chops, whereas a squash tail will kind of cut through them or release from them. It's a very minute detail. If you're new to surfing, you're really not going to feel it that often, but the pros will like absolutely ride a different tail depending on the conditions or wave that they're surfing.
So can we say like squash tail, the wider tail is better for like generating speed, and the pintails are more for like barreling bigger waves? Is that how it goes?
It's more like the flow of the turns. Like, yeah, I mean, like trestles, a lot of guys would ride like a squash tail or, your standard tail like that. Whereas somebody surfing Rincon might want a rounded pintail because it's a much longer, more barreling kind of wave. And you're doing like just regular carving turns, like Connor Coffin style surfing. And then if you went down to trestles, it would be more like Kolohe's, like more flicky, tail throws and stuff, which is just a very different release type of surfing. So that's kind of the pros and cons to it. Also, a big con of shortboarding is the waves are really small. You're going to be struggling to catch waves. They're terrible for beginners because you really need to understand how to use the power of the wave, read sections to link turns, and the biggest mistake a lot of beginners do is they buy a shortboard because they think it's cooler.
It looks cool.
But
I feel like everybody does that.
Yep.
There's so many people do that.
I did it.
I fell into that trap.
Yeah, I did it.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, my first.
I still rarely ride a shortboard. I'm always on my juice box, which is, I guess we'll get into that. a next board type, but rarely ride an actual shortboard.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely if you're thinking about getting into surfing, we'd recommend a much bigger board. We'll get into that in the foamy section. But yeah, those are kind of and then the pros are you can do a lot better turns, and it's what the pros ride when they're, this is the highest level type board as far as shortboard competition goes. We could talk about the longboard tour, and you wouldn't even be allowed to ride those in a longboard heat. So the next type of board is the fish. So there's your kind of classic swallowtail fish, and then a more recent one it's been around for a while, but it's recently become very popular is the twin pin. That one would have a rounded tail, like a pintail, and then it would have twin fins. Typically your fishes are going to be twin fins, but a lot of them also can be quads, even a 2+1, which is like 2 twin fins and then a tiny little trailer fin.
Wait, so you're calling a twin pin a fish?
Yep.
So the fish doesn't have to have the swallowtail?
No, they don't. Yeah, there's.
I hope there's not a test on this. I feel like I'm back in school.
yeah. Make sure you guys listen to this podcast over and over and over because you will be quizzed.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it doesn't. The classic swallowtail fish, the classic fish would have a big kind of curved swallowtail, but no, they don't technically require it.
So then what makes it a fish?
It's more the board width and the type of waves you would ride it in. So it would be more for like a mushier point break, or softer conditions really lend themselves well to a fish shape. Again, you wouldn't want it at like Snapper Rocks or Rincon on a really good low tide day because they have a very flat rocker, which is the curve of the board. And that allows for more speed and better paddling, but it comes at the cost of turning because it's not in a more curved shape. When you put the board on rail, it doesn't turn as sharply. It also makes it harder to make steep drops because it's so flat. It doesn't really have any forgiveness. If the wave steepens up a little bit or there's like a little step in the middle of the wave, you're going to nosedive into it with a flat board, and it's more for like a softer, mushier wave where you just want to have endless speed. And that's what's also great about a twin fin. You don't have that center fin causing any drag, so you tend to go a lot faster, and it rolls rail to rail a lot better because there's a fin on each rail and nothing in the middle to kind of cause any drag if you're not perfect with your execution.
That makes sense.
So do they normally have more volume in the front so it's easier to paddle in the waves?
Yes, definitely volume forward for most fish. The Hypto-Crypto, which is kind of that hybrid fish shortboard, it's a very volume forward type board.
So pros, still very maneuverable like a shortboard, but a little bit easier to catch the waves.
Yeah.
Cons, I would say, is like which it's kind of whatever style you want, but I always find it's way easier to like slide out with a twin fin versus a thruster. If you like try to do a big bottom turn, sometimes I'll just fall on my face.
Especially backside. It happens to me all the time. Backside, I'll like try to force a big bottom turn and my tail just slides out and I eat it. Broken a few fins out that way too. So be careful and make sure you really set it on rail before you try to do it. That's the other thing. A lot of shortboard guys, if they have a more flickier style and they want to learn a more on-rail style, they'll pick up a twin fin fish because you really got to surf it rail to rail to get the most out of it. So great training way if you're trying to like, okay, I'm riding mushier waves, but I want to get better at turning. It's not really enough power to push a shortboard. Get a twin fin fish and mess around on it. They're super fun boards.
Or make your own. We got YouTube videos showing how to do it.
Yeah.
I that was the first and only surfboard I shaped, and it turned out pretty terrible, but it was rideable. And that one was actually really fun until it ended up breaking. But all the other fishes that I've tried, they feel terrible, and I can never tell. Like, it feels good in my hands, and I go surf it, and I can't turn it, or so it's tricky. But maybe if you make your own, you'll find the magic one.
Can I try yours sometime?
The one I made?
Yeah.
I think it's in the showroom right now. It's
take
probably not watertight, but yeah. I think we broke out the fin box. We did a skit with it, and we broke the fin out of the box.
No.
We did a doctor skit. It's pretty funny. Let's do some more skits.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one.
What do we got next?
The next one's a mini mal, which is short for mini Malibu, I believe.
So should we call it mini mal, or I'm a little confused on the
mini
pronunciation.
Mal, I don't know. My pronunciation sucks. I've heard it. These are like some random guy just called it something. And, I think it's a little slang too, but they're kind of, imagine just a really small version of a longboard, like your classic Malibu.
Is that like the one that's cut off, like straight?
Yeah, they're often kind of cut off in the tail, a big squash tail or block tail at the back of them.
So that's like the extreme, right? We're talking about like pintails, and then if you just cut it off, that you go faster with that, right? It's just not as easy to turn.
Some of them do have a little bit of a pin or a thumb to them, but I think the classic one is actually a block tail.
Which would be benefits of speed?
Yeah, I've only ridden one in my life, I think. They're not something that really ever interested me that much, but they're cool. I mean, I know a lot of Malibu guys really liked them. For when it got a little bit bigger, they'd take them out at like first point and
do you ever ride my the lunch tray, the first blackboard I ever got that my neighbor Jim Ellington shaped?
No, I didn't.
That one is almost a straight cutoff tail. It kind of like goes in to a little triangle thing, but that board, so fast, but it was just a lot harder to turn than any other board that I had.
Interesting.
I'm guessing it's because of the tail.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. With the big wide tail, they're very hard to turn. So they're good for a wave like Malibu, where you're just kind of cruising down the line, and it's kind of a faster wave like that. And it's longboard style surfing. It's not high performance shortboarding at all. Mm-hmm. So the next one we have is the step up. It's basically.
Should we include my juice box in there before we get to step ups?
Yeah.
That's probably like it's kind of what was the board you just said? Oh, mini mal.
Yeah.
So it's like, then I had, if you guys followed, I made the fish. Well, so we had the lunch tray, the first blackboard I ever had. Then I made, that one broke after a few years, made my own fish. That one eventually broke. And then I went up to, I think, Oceanside for Whitlock was the surf shaper. And filmed that whole thing. They made my board. And I love this thing, and I call it the juice box. It's not totally black. We did a little like gray black swirls on it, and that's my go-to board. And it's like, I think it's only 5'6". It's really wide. It's got a fat nose and tail, but it's not cut off like the lunch tray. It's rounded, but I think that thing is perfect. You can surf it in pretty much anything. And that's the kind of board that I like better, is like a short, wider board, instead of like a short board where it's like short and narrow. I never can seem to get a good feeling on those, unless like maybe if the waves are perfect. Salina Cruise, I rode some really nice waves there on a short board. But yeah, for Mission Beach, I'm all about the short, wide boards, mini mal style.
Yeah, I unless I'm serving like Rincon, Trestles, Indo, somewhere with ridiculously good waves, I don't ever want to ride a standard shortboard. I
But
actively
you take
avoid
the
them.
Hipto usually.
Huh?
You take the Hipto?
Yeah,
usually?
my Hipto is my like go-to daily driver kind of shortboard that I always ride because I can go really fast on it. I can turn as well as I need to, and yeah, they're very fun. Super good for like quick barrels and very good board.
And then were we saying the mid-length or step up? Is that
Step up.
Big Red?
No, so a step up is just a step up from your standard shortboard. It's what you would take out at like Big Sunset or Big Blacks or, kind of a not quite riding a gun territory, but it's bigger waves. These are going to be usually 6'6" and up from there up to like probably 7'6" is like a cutoff for them, and then you start getting into gun territory. But
So what's the purpose?
they're
Why
for
ride a
bigger
step up?
waves, a little bit better paddling, and for like steeper, bigger waves. Like if it was a soft, mushy day at like PB Point, but it was double overhead, you might ride that wave's not even good when it's like that, but you might ride like a mid-length or an egg rather than a step up. But if you were going to surf, I don't know, go down to some Puerto Escondido or something, and it wasn't as big as it gets. It's not XXL, but it's still a really powerful, good day. You take that out, or Pipeline. Pipeline would have a lot of step ups.
I never understood this at first, but I think I get it. You'd think like you want a shortboard on a big barreling wave, but when it gets like overhead a bit, then it's actually hard to paddle into those with the shortboard. So that's the purpose of the step up. It gives you more paddling power.
Yeah, I would never have taken my step up out in anything under like 10 foot to like double overhead. It's not. I mean, maybe once or twice when I thought it was going to be big and we ended up surfing like a novelty wave or something. But no, it's like double overhead plus. But it's not like you would ride it before you get up to a gun, which is like, 25 foot plus. It's kind of that like mid big wave type board.
Got it.
Yeah. So the next kind is eggs. Now there are short eggs and there's also longer eggs. So I ride about an 8 foot Takayama egg. But there's also like your foam board that host Stevie makes. That's a bit of an egg shape. Anything that's kind of rounded nose, rounded tail kind of qualifies.
Probably my juice box too then.
That's what I was going to say.
5-6 egg.
Yeah. Because when I went to Indonesia, I was trying to figure out how to pick out a board for those waves. And it was also like the best waves I ever surfed. And I was going around like surf shop to surf shop. And all of them were like recommending like egg style boards, like a little bit like more volume, a little bit bigger. And I like hit up one of my friends back here and kind of like confirmed all that. And it was like game changing advice too, because I was catching so many more waves than I would have because everybody pulled up on their shortboards and they were sitting on the inside, and I was picking them up on the outside. And usually like, I would never be doing that. But is that kind of where that kind of falls into play, like the eggs?
The pro is you got more foam, you can get into it earlier. They're great. I mean, anything with a little bit more foam. I like getting into a wave earlier rather than like having to get it right in the perfect spot. A lot of waves in California are fairly shifty, versus like, Mentawais or somewhere where it's just perfect picturesque wave. You don't really need it, but in Indo on smaller days or whatever, like it would be a super fun board to have out there, and especially because a lot of those waves are like have names like racetracks, or they're clearly very fast waves. You can get going, you can get into it early, and you can get going down the line. Whereas a lot of the shortboarders are like taking off right in the spot, and they might get passed up by the wave as it's like going down the line like a freight train.
So you can have like a 6.0 egg, and that would still fit that category?
Yeah.
Gotcha. All
Yeah, but typically I think they originated, because we were looking up mid-lengths after our last podcast. We kind of talked about it. And I think the mid-lengths originated, they were called shortboards, but they were like 7'6" or 8 foot. They were pretty big shortboards because, everybody else was riding 9 to 10 foot boards. So in the late 60s. So.
But wait, so we were talking about eggs.
Yeah.
Now we're into the mid-length controversy, right?
Yep.
We got a heated debate over here.
Yeah.
When did mid-lengths get invented? I say they never got invented. They just it's just an in-between size, but we have a little
it's like a chicken to the egg type of situation. Here.
It's confusing.
So mid-lengths, they're not really groveler type boards. They actually perform better in like bigger surf. So they're kind of like almost you'd ride them in similar waves to like size waves to like a standard shortboard or a step up, but a lot of people do grovel on them, and groveling, for you guys that don't know, that's going out in waves that aren't very good. You kind of grovel around and try to get like scrape into waves. They're more like mid-lengths are a little bit sleeker, and we looked it up, and Bob McTavish shaped a 710 Rincon tracker, and it was the first widely publicized mid-length, although at the time it was considered a shortboard, and that was kind of our debate. Well, was it really like created, or was it just a shorter longboard? And I mean, kind of both. It was like around then was like the quote-unquote shortboard revolution, when like boards went from, and this is the late 60s.
Well, you didn't say what year.
Well,
you said that happened, did you?
Sorry, I think that was let me pull it up here.
You said like the 40s or something, didn't you?
Yeah, it was 68. No, 1968. So the shortboard revolution was around the like early 70s. The thruster. So in the early 70s, they were riding twin fins, and then let me look up the year the thruster came out.
Because didn't you say 68? That was a 3-fin board. Maybe it wasn't a thruster. Maybe it was a.
No, it was probably a single fin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I would imagine it was a single fin back then, and then Simon Anderson created the thruster in 1981, so it was about 10 years after. Yeah, they were riding 20s for a long time. And yeah.
All right, and so now people are dads across the world ride mid-lengths.
Yeah.
It's basically
I was riding one all weekend.
No, but that's like everyone wants the board that's easy to catch waves, but also maneuver, and I feel like mid-lengths are a good balance of those things.
Yeah, maybe we can throw in the shot I got at the Halloween contest and the
Yeah,
mid-length trying to do an air.
It's a pretty good Shane one. Can. They're not only limited to dads, but Shane can do anything on any board. So.
Super fun boards though. They actually they've grown on me a lot lately, and I think everybody's kind of waking
I'm not
up
into
to
them.
the.
I don't like it.
Oh.
It's just like instead of adding more length, just add more width. I want a shortboard. Okay. And it's like it just makes the longer the board is, the harder it is to turn. Ooh. So it's like let's just widen it instead of lengthen it.
I disagree. I think a longer, narrower board with a small pulled-in tail and a bunch of volume forward is a lot easier to turn than a wide shortboard. You can't fit it in as small of waves. So if you're surfing like waist-high waves, the mid-length, it's so long that it doesn't fit in that space. So I would go wider in smaller waves, but in bigger, mushier waves, I would much rather have more length and a narrower board so that I can actually like put it on rail or try airs with it, because at that size of a wave, you have the speed to push you into something to actually do the turn.
You haven't ridden my juice box, have you?
Oh, listen. Okay,
put that thing to the test, and then tell me you want to ride a mid-length.
Yeah, that'll be a reel for sure on Instagram.
Yeah,
we'll try to get that done in the next couple weeks.
Nice.
So the next shape is the fun shapes. They're basically mid-length, eggy type boards.
Are we talking ASIMs?
Yeah, those could be a fun shape. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to go into ASIMs because you could have shortboard, fishy, mid-length, longboard. Maybe we'll talk about that in the fin podcast, because they have different like fin setups, and we were just talking about fun shapes, kind of to wrap it up, pros and cons. I think a lot of fun shapes are more like a shorter longboard style. They're made to look like a classic longboard, whereas an egg and a mid-length they're a little bit more shortboardy in their design. So that's kind of what I think a fun shape would be.
So did mid-lengths, did they just rebrand fun boards as mid-lengths?
I think they rebranded shortboards as mid-lengths because they were calling a 710, McTavish was calling a 710 a shortboard, and then guys are riding like 6'6" fishes in like 2 or 3 years later, and if the 710's a shortboard, what are these like, What are you going to call those?
I don't think mid-lengths became popular till like 5 years ago. I started seeing them pop up everywhere. And I think that people didn't you want a little more volume or whatever. You don't want to say you're riding a fun board, because then you're like, everyone wants to ride a shortboard and be cool, right?
Yeah.
And so like instead of being like I'm on a fun board, you'd be like I'm on a mid length. I think maybe somebody was smart, whichever surfboard company it was, and they like kind of rebranded it like that.
I think they've had a few resurgences. So I think they were really popular in the 70s when they were called shortboards, but now we refer to them as mid-lengths because we have much shorter boards. And then I think in the 90s, they also became pretty popular again. And then recently in the last, like 5 years, there's been a big rebirth. Guys like Torrin Martin, or I'm trying to think of other guys that are famous for riding mid-lengths, but he instantly comes to mind. There's... they've become very popular recently. And that's when I kind of started falling in love with them again. So
you're such a trend chaser.
Yeah, I know. Got to be a hipster. I know. I used to, when I was younger, I would like be very anti epoxy, and now I ride a Hypto Crypto, which is an epoxy. I ride a Takayama Egg, which is an epoxy, and I ride a CJ Nelson, which is like the Thunderbolt Firewire technology. So my 3 main boards are now not polyurethane. And
you think that's the trend, is epoxy? Because all I hear from other people, we'll go deep on this on a different episode. But you think what do you think is like the popular one? I feel like everyone's like, look, epoxy, it's all about the poly, like you can really feel everything or whatever.
Yeah,
for
a standard shortboard, I still don't like the feel of epoxy, but for a fishier board, you can ride it a bit smaller because it's more buoyant. And then for a mid-length, you also can ride it a bit narrower tail and it's still very buoyant. And for my longboard, it's glass so heavy that it actually sinks in quite well. I ride a 9.2 CJ Nelson Sprout that Ryan Engel makes, and they use the Thunderbolt technology, which is like a really interesting like carbon fiber stuff and all sorts of stuff going on that I don't really understand, but it works like magic. It's a great board.
Thunderbolt is carbon fiber?
They do have carbon fiber ones. They also have like composite ones. I'll have to look up exactly what it is. With like board materials, I'm not the best person to talk about those sort of things, and I'm going to do more research for our podcast episode in it, but I'm like, if the board's fun and it works, I like it, and I don't really care what it's made of. I don't know how big my Takayama Egg is. It doesn't have dimensions written on it, and I don't really care how big it is because it's a really fun board and it works. Like, it doesn't...
Size doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but I was saying, in your opinion, since you know more about boards than me, what would you say is more popular right now, epoxy or poly boards? Mr. Trendsetter.
Gosh, I don't know. That's a hard question. I think epoxies are having so much growth right now. Like there's the Future Flex that Hayden Shapes is doing, so there's no stringer in the middle and they kind of flex like parabolically along the rails versus like a center stringer that most like PU boards would have. So there's all these really cool things that epoxies can do that a PU board would just kind of break trying to do it. So I think the future is epoxy. And that might be very controversial to say.
Good. We love a good controversy. We'll dive into that one on another episode.
Let me know what you think in the comments.
Wait, we can only give them one thing to say in the comments.
Nah, they can talk about whatever they like.
I know, but you ask them to do a million things, they get nothing.
Fair enough.
To one, we'll at least get some people.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to the guns.
All right.
Guns are your big wave, pointy. They're the shape of a shortboard, but they're often 8, 9, 10, maybe even 11 feet. I don't know how big the really big guns are, but they're
also called elephant chasers.
Yeah.
So where does the name come from? Which one was it called first? Why is it called a gun?
Ooh, I don't know.
It's
probably,
hunting big waves? Is that why they?
I don't know why they called it that. We'll have to figure that one out. Let me look it up while we talk about the next thing. But basically, they're for your big waves, guys that are going to paddle Waimea, Jaws, Nazare even maybe. They're going to be riding guns. Most people in Southern California don't have it, but there are some guys that charge down to like Todos Santos, or they'll take like a smaller gun out at Black's Beach. That's, some people would call it a step up and other people would call it a gun, and they're kind of in that like 7'10", 8-foot range, and it's just, again, surfboard naming has some like weird conventions, and you might go to like Australia or somewhere else or Europe and they'll call things completely different names. Like it's not a homogeneous naming system. There's no like, here's the dimensions, here's who makes them, and here's exactly what they are. Like, it's ever changing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like glass half full, half empty attitude.
Yeah. So the next is your high pro longboard. Oh, the pros and cons of guns. If you're new to surfing, don't get one. Huge waves. But they give you a lot of paddling power. They have a lot of rocker in them, so you can get into big steep waves.
I was gonna say, what's the difference then between a gun and like a longboard?
Longboards are generally wider, rounder nose, single fin, whereas guns are sharper, pointed, a ton of rocker. Thrusters or quads typically. But you could also have a thruster or quad longboard. It's just a little bit rarer. But longboards are generally for mushier waves, unless you're riding a high pro longboard, which is for high performance surf. So a lot of guys in Hawaii would be riding high pro longboards like Bonga Perkins out of Pipeline or something, for example. Like, he's going to be on a pretty high pro longboard. And then you look at the California classic Malibu kind of nose rider or whatever, they're going to be very flat, big single fin, usually like a pivot fin or something. And we're going to go into fins in another podcast, but basically longboards are for cruising on smaller waves, getting comfortable, kind of using smaller waves energy, and then guns are for harnessing huge waves energy and being able to like get down the face and actually do a turn and survive. Like, they're the same length. You could probably catch a giant wave on a longboard, but as soon as you try to knife a drop on one, or like, it's much scarier. Like, you're not going to want to do it. And respect to all the old timers that would charge huge waves on longboards. I
was gonna say, back in the day, they called there are trees that they were surfing. They called those shortboards. Shane.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. 710 shortboards. So that's your high pro longboard. They're generally, like, when I rode
high
performance. So I rode, when I used to do NSSA longboarding contest, I rode a high pro longboard. It was a thruster, not even a 2+1, which is like 2 little side bite fins and then a single fin. It was actually like 3 just regular standard fins. Very narrow tail, pretty narrow nose. Was really difficult to hang 10, but I could do a lot of like sharp turns. I could get up there, cheater 5 it, and do a helicopter off of that, or like I'd take off and I'd do pop shove it. So that was kind of like my thing back then, because you get an easy like 3, 4, 5 points at the beginning of a wave, and then you just like run up, cheater 5, and spin a helicopter, and you got your score.
I think we've seen some of those moves in past videos.
Yeah, I'll try to get my hands on a high pro longboard and all these types of boards, and we'll do a video on each one of them if you want.
Yeah, I was gonna say CJ can throw the footage in while we're talking about it from our other videos.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
So then, since we're on longboards, then you got the high pro, and then the nose rider is like the other kind, or what?
Yeah, your kind of classic shape, and they'll call them like classic nose rider. They'll call both of those are often referred to as logs, which are like heavier, thicker, kind of California style longboards.
So it's not just a synonym for longboard. You can't call it a log unless it's a certain kind.
Yeah, it's generally reserved for bigger, thicker longboards. I wouldn't refer to a high pro as a log ever. You probably confuse people. You could. I mean, you could some people will like sarcastically say it. They'll be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go log," but they're like really not riding a log, or they're riding like a foamy or something. There's no like police or regulations on any of these names. Like,
Shane is gonna apply for the police position.
Yeah, surf police, open up. And then we've got your piggy longboards that kind of have like wider hips, which is towards the like butt of the board. They're like wider down there, and then they kind of go up to a narrower nose. That was kind of the original like older longboards, and then like I think it was David Nueva kind of developed the classic California longboard with his like Bing boards. And then there's your kind of knifier longboards that are like that pig, but to an even more extreme. They have like a very narrow nose. There's a girl, Melee, who has the pocket knife, and that's one of her like longboards, very narrow nose. I cannot surf them very well. I like the exact opposite kind of longboard. I like the classic nose riders, the really wide nose, like the CJ Sprout. Do you guys ride longboards? I don't even know I've ever seen.
I think we were just talking about this. Justin doesn't. Was CC's board the first one that you rode that long?
Yeah.
So we got the 8.2 soft top. That's what I ride for a longboard.
Okay.
First board I ever had was a 9.6 when I first moved out here that I learned on. And then usually I ride the juice box, and then if it's smaller waves, I'll take out the 8.2 soft top, which we got a lot of people asking when we're going to restock, and we're working on it. We sold out of all of them and the shortboards, the 5.6s. But people love them, so we're going to get them restocked soon. In the meantime, sorry, I got the last one. But that's the 8.2, not that long, but like catch any wave with that.
And I was just looking at when the gun was invented, and it's around that like Bob McTavish time and George Greeno. They were kind of doing some shortboard revolution stuff, and yeah, they were kind of making shortboards, but they're in the bigger size, and they're saying that's around when the gun was invented. They don't say who coined it here. I almost want to say like Brewer did it, but yeah, this website's not. Yeah, I think Dick Brewer made the mini gun. It was kind of a big pointy shortboard thing that it looks nothing like modern day guns. Do not look anything like this board. So it's again like the shortboards that are 7'10" and they look like what we call mid-lengths or eggs. Like the name changed so much over time as like it got refined, and you know, people specialized in big wave surfing. Like none of them are riding 7-foot single fins and calling it a gun. They would be like, no, that's like not at all what we would want to take out at Waimea or Jaws or somewhere huge. Like they're riding big like 10-foot thrusters.
Is Bob McTavish still alive?
Ooh, I don't know.
Let's get him on the pod. Let's get to the real story, all right? Not just websites talking about who made it first. We'll go direct it to the source.
I'll get the. I'll see if the beach house can get us in contact with them. Yeah, it looks like he's 79.
Oh yeah, he's got 20 years left.
Lives in Australia now.
We'll get him on a Zoom call.
Yeah, that'd be sick. I'm pretty sure my buddy's dad, Roger, at the beach house in Santa Barbara would probably know him. Like he kind of knows everybody. Like he's been around the industry for forever, and he's how I know a lot of these like older shapers and surf history stuff. And actually, if you ever get a chance to go into the beach house up in Santa Barbara, they have an amazing wall of surf history there, where it's like, you know, all the new inventions, when like Greeno started working on the shorter boards, when Yater was working on the spoons, and then the rafters are just covered in old school boards, old Webers, old Hansons, old Yaters.
So is that like
an amazing shop to go explore?
Oh my gosh, we died.
Oh no.
Boys.
When did we die?
Don't know.
Damn.
Do you
know where we stopped?
Yeah, so we're back. Sorry, we lost our little podcast thinger-majigger. It ran out of battery, so we got some new ones in there. Sorry for the audio quality previously. Not sure when that cut out, but I think we just we finished our talk about longboards, and we got some new terms that I haven't heard of. Gliders.
Yeah. So that's kind of the different longboard styles, and then gliders are also a fairly, I think they've risen in popularity in the last like 10 or so years.
Also, not sure which one this falls into, but can you tell me about a shovel nose?
I don't know what a shovel nose is. The shark?
I don't know. I've seen it on like, I was looking at some longboards like TJ Nelson or like, I don't know, Firewire, and I saw like a shovel nose.
Oh, maybe it's just a board
or like
name
a scoop
for
nose
something. Oh, yeah. So there's like, people have like spoon noses.
Yeah, that's maybe what it was.
That's actually, I love that story. So there's a shaper out of Santa Barbara, California named Rennie Yater, and so at Malibu you kind of cruise down the line and it's a much smaller wave generally, whereas Rincon gets, especially at low tide on like a big west swell, it's a lot more powerful and hollow of a wave. So they needed a board that you could both cruise and nose ride on at the bottom of the wave, but then maneuver and kind of turn a bit better at the top of the wave. And so what he decided to do was make a kind of a spoon cutout and a little step down, which they call a step deck, towards the nose of the board. And what this did was it lightened up the nose because There was less foam up there, and it also allowed you that you could have a bit more rocker in the nose to navigate Rincon's steeper kind of wave. And then when you cross step up and you end up nose riding, the board actually flattens out a tiny bit because of the thinness and the way it's designed. And then, so once you get on the nose, it'll flatten out and it'll speed up the board. Whereas most boards that are have too much rocker, if you try to nose ride them, they kind of push water in front of them and slow you down. But at Rincon, that's like the last thing you want is to slow down when you're up on the nose. You actually want to like speed up more. So it was this really cool invention. There's a documentary called Spoons that's also very good. I highly recommend watching it. We can try to link a photo of that. I own it on YouTube. Actually, my buddy Wyatt was the director of it, and yeah, he got to interview Rennie Yater, who notoriously like doesn't do that many interviews, and great surf movie. Amazing story about this Santa Barbara little niche shape that kind of changed a lot of the ways that people looked at longboarding.
So they the bottom of the nose is different, or the top of the nose?
The top.
Okay.
The top is it kind of drops down. So that's your spoon nose. There's also like concave. So some boards will have a big, like, if you flip the board upside down and the fins facing up, you would have this big scoop out in the nose.
Yeah, I think that's
so
what I was thinking. I saw that before.
Okay, yeah. So that's what that does is kind of create lift as the wave goes, as the energy goes up the wave. It runs into the middle of the board while you're nose riding, and then it converts it and pushes it back down, and that'll like kind of lift you up a little bit while you're nose riding. It'll also hold the board down onto the wave because there's a little bit more suction by having that concave. It acts like a suction cup in some ways. Whereas if it was more like a hull, which is more rounded, it will actually release a little bit or easier. So that's if the concave is like in more of a boat hole type shape versus a suction cup type shape. Really weird little like intricacies. Also like shortboard tail designs. People will be like, oh, it's a double concave going into single or single into a double. That stuff is like way out of my understanding. That's like shaper talk. And like, I'm like, hey, shaper, what do you think I should have on this? And they're like, oh, we're going to do this little like entry here. And then it's like this and that and the other. And I'm like, cool, if it works, it works. And I'm happy with that. Like,
yeah, I always wonder how much that actually makes a difference.
It does.
But
I'm sure it does.
What's the glider then?
So gliders, they are very long boards that are designed to glide into waves early. If I had to hazard a guess, I would say Skip Fry was one of the inventors, or at least popularized them. He is often seen out at Old Man's at Tourmaline, sitting way out the back on a glider and getting into waves extra early.
So it's just like a super long board?
Yeah, it's often
like
with a bit of a pointy nose, though. They're not really for like nose riding or anything. They're just for like cruising. Sometimes they're twin fins. Sometimes they're single fins, thrusters. I'm sure there's even quads out there.
How long are we talking?
Oh God, one of my friends, Lindsay, I think she rides like an 11-foot one. Like there's some big ones. I'm sure. There was a guy out at there's a guy out in like way out at Old Man's recently that was on a 12-foot one too that I was talking to, and I was like, dude, what do you even do with all that? There's so much room for activities. Like, what's the biggest board you guys have ridden? Like, have you?
Probably like 8 foot.
8 foot.
I might have taken like a friend's 10-foot out. Okay. Or at least 9.6.
We're gonna have a longboard day.
We should.
Yeah. take your buddy's longboarding day. We'll do that.
Yeah.
Sick.
I rode tandem on Frank's board, which was probably like 10 foot. So that was hard. But
damn. You did tandem? Were you lifting or were you being lifted?
Oh no, I just I put B in front of me and and paddle us in, told her to stand up, and then I think I stood up too. I think we were both standing up, but I didn't hold her.
You got a photo of it?
We did a video of it. It got like taken down from YouTube because it was like camera in her butt, like thong bikini, and so we got a little flagged.
Oh man.
Yeah.
YouTube hates fun sometimes.
I know.
And then our final type of board, one of my personal favorites, like I said, is foamies.
Oh, yeah.
I love a foamy. I have like 8 or 9 of them. They are great. I'm a huge fan of them.
A lot of controversy with foamies.
Yeah, I mean, there's big pros and cons to them. I really like that a lot of people are, kind of surfing them when they're beginning. it's way safer. It's a lot of fun. If you damage them, it's not a big deal. You can just put some hot glue in it and seal them right up. You don't have to take them to, a ding repair place. But they do fall apart a lot quicker. They're not as long lasting. So if you do buy a foamy, try to get one that lasts a little bit longer, because take it from me, you'll want it even when you've been surfing 25 plus years. Like, they're great to just have to, your friend comes and visits from Wisconsin or Washington or Oregon or wherever, and you just take them out on a foamy, and it's, great to teach people on. And
we did a video shoot. I don't know if that was a year ago or 2 years.
Yeah.
With you on our foamies, and he's doing like airs on the 5.6. So it doesn't matter what board this guy rides. But yeah, speaking of durability, we most soft tops, we actually made a video a while ago. Most soft tops is like the foam and then a wooden stringer and like a plastic bottom. Wavestorm is like that. Catch surf is surprisingly like that. I thought their catch surfs were going to be built better because they're more expensive, but cut them open with a chainsaw, and Wavestorm and catch surf are pretty much built the same. And so ours is built with a regular, it's like a regular surfboard core. So it's got the foam, it's got the resin fiberglass layer, and then it has the soft deck on top and a plastic layer on the bottom. So it's actually like a real surfboard wrapped in a soft top. So it's going to last you a lot longer.
Yeah.
If we ever get them restocked.
And they're very fun. I kept both of those after we made the video. Well, you gave them to me, and I ride is it 8.2 or 8.6?
8.2 and 5.6.
8.2. I ride that one all the time. It's super fun, and now that winter's back and we're actually going to have some waves, I'm definitely going to take the 5.6 back out.
I rode the 8.2 this morning and got some baby waves.
How did you?
And super fun.
Yeah, it's funny because that's like the foamies are kind of like a full circle board, where it's like usually the people that are just learning start on them. But there's been multiple times where I've gone surfing and like the best guy out there is on a Wavestorm and like a wetsuit that's got holes all over it, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
they're a very fun time. If you're getting into surfing, get a foam board, 8 foot, 8.2, 9 foot, somewhere in that range. It's gonna be a lot better for you. The big pros are they're more affordable, they're easier to repair, they're safer for everyone involved, and they're the most fun sometimes. If the conditions are right, or rather if the conditions are bad, I love taking a foamy out, because you don't take it serious. You're trying backflips off of it, or like board transfers, or you can do all these fun goofy things, and like even if the surf sucks, like you're gonna have fun on a foamy more than likely. Whereas if you like took out a standard shortboard, you're gonna be like pissed and punching the water and splashing about, and they're great.
Boycott shortboards.
Yeah.
But to wrap it up, to summarize, the shorter the board, the more maneuverable it is, but the harder it is to catch waves. The longer the board, you're gonna catch all the waves, but probably not gonna do much on it. You're just gonna go straight down the line, depending how long it is. That's a good summary, right?
Yeah. And I'm gonna ask him.
Oh yeah.
Let us know in the comments what you guys typically ride.
But you gotta look at the camera.
Let us know in the comments what you guys typically ride. We'd love to deep dive into some of these a little bit more, depending on what our listeners take out.
For sure.
There we go. That's the pod.
That's the pod.